Good morning and welcome to OpenLine Online. And it's November 3rd, and I just love the echo. And we started, it's amazing that, we have so many shows that are going here, and we got to make sure that the on-air shows are starting on time and things like that. And sometimes we have a little bit of clean up after the on-air show, so sometimes we don't start on time here. But I don't want to blame it on technical difficulties, because that's not what's happening. And we thank you on a Marathon Sunday for being here, and we thank you for always supporting us here on the Open Line online stream. So we have a lot to talk about, and we are going to introduce the panel. I'm going to start over to my far right and introduce our legal analyst, former judge, attorney Bob Pickett. Good morning, Bob.
Good morning, team, and good morning to all the folks out there watching us and listening to us as we talk about the issues that are important to them.
That's right. And we have Brother Protest, brother activist, and he has an event that, well, I would say an event that he will be telling us about, which involves Dr. Cornel Weston. He'll get a chance to tell us a little bit about that, a little later part of our program, and that is Brother Larry Ham. Good morning, Brother Larry.
Good morning, everybody.
Sounds good. All right. Next to him is our sister journalist, Nether Khan. Good to see you, Sister Nether.
Good morning. Good to be back. I'm good. I know you guys missed me last week.
I mean, you skiing in Vermont and all kind of things. So,
right. No, it's actually just under the weather and, a lot going on. So good to be back.
Good to have you back.
That sounds like a foreign activity.
A foreign activity.
Bob, I'll tell you, Bob comes with him nowadays. When he throws us curveball, forkball. We gonna sign him up with the New York Yankees, man. He got all kind of pitches he throws at us.
How many brothers and sisters do you see up there?
In Vermont? Oh, I wasn't in Vermont. That's,
that's just.
I was here.
Yeah, she was here. Yeah. She was under the weather, battling. One half of the Sports Brothers, Jamie Harris, is off. Covering the marathon today is our good brother, Bobby Childs. Good morning, Bobby.
Good morning, all. And again, welcome for spending your Sunday morning with us. And if you haven't made it outside yet, it's a little chilly. And the way you can tell that, because Larry's wearing his hoodie today.
That's right.
Well, no, that means he's protesting when he wears the.
That too. Yeah. But we got his hat and his hoodie on. It's a little chilly this morning for Larry.
He's looking like a real brother today.
There you go. And we have a special guest in studio, carryover from our on-air show, and that is Brother Corey Pegues. And Corey Pegues is retired from the NYPD as a deputy inspector in 2013 after 21 years of service in the New York Police Department here in New York. And he is the author of the book, Once a Cop, The Street, the Law, Two Worlds, One Man. Good morning, Brother Corey.
Hey, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to this panel.
Let me ask you this real quick, Corey, and then we'll start the program. Tell us a little bit about your book, and give a little introduction of who you were before you joined the police department and who you became once you were in the NYPD.
Yeah, well, the book is a memoir. It's about my life. So basically, as a young boy, around the age of 13, I started selling drugs in the streets of Queens, New York. Ultimately started working for one of the most violent drug conglomerates in America called the Supreme Team.
That's correct.
And I changed my life December 12th, 1986, when I had my son, Corey Jr. I went to the military. I was in the Army for 3 years and 8 months. And then I went to New York City Police Department and had a rise. I rose really quick in the police department.
Of the military?
I was in the Army.
Army, gotcha.
I can't swim, so the Navy was out. My uncle came home from the Marines. He was crazy, and I was afraid to fly. So I was backed into the Army. But it worked out 3 years and 8 months.
Hey, Cor,
and I rose to the top of the New York City Police rank. Huh?
Don't we get books, too?
Oh, yeah. We get books. For Tina and tell me to bring
signing
no books.
later.
Yeah. We get
This
some
is
books. That's from when the book first came out, and y'all brought me on the show.
You
got a book.
I supported the brother.
Exactly.
Because mine is not signed here. You understand?
We're
So
going to
I
sign it
supported the
today.
brother. I went out
Exactly.
there.
And
That's
so,
right.
You know, I had a meteoric rise to the top, you know, becoming, you know, a commander in the biggest police department in the United States. So the themes of my book is self-awareness, self-actualizations, transformation, and obviously I talk about police policies and procedures. But what I want people to get out of that book is don't let your past identify or define your future, because this kid in the back, 17 years old, with all his jewelry and a gun on at Andrew Jackson High School in the hallway, you would have never thought that he would be one of the top executives in the New York City Police Department.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and along the way, I got my bachelor's, master's, went to Columbia University.
Nice.
And I'm an adjunct professor, you know, periodically at Mega Evans. So a lot of good stuff,
Wonderful.
That's amazing.
Wonderful.
Sounds good. And you know that I'm going to springboard into something because we didn't get a chance to talk that much about it the past couple of weeks, and the story was out there. The video was circulating on social media, and that was the situation that happened on that Friday afternoon, October 25th, in the borough of Brooklyn, down at J Street Metrotech train station, where you saw a group of teenagers, young folks, where there were two groups, basically got into a scrimmage, a fight, and the police came and they arrested. You see in the video one young lady that was in handcuffs, standing against the garbage can. Seemed like everything was in control. Of course, the kids were saying, "Hey, they didn't do anything, this, that, and other." And all of a sudden, you see a cop run, it comes into the video, and he punches one of the kids in the back of the head. And as they're subduing that kid, you see another kid that walks into the frame. He has his hands in his pockets. And then you see the same cop comes over and punches this kid in the face. Now, this kid is self-defense. First of all, the reaction is, whoa, I just got hit. The first thing is, I'm going to defend myself. And he went toe-to-toe with this police officer until he was subdued by, other police officers. Yeah. And, so many people saw this video. You had public advocate Jumaane Williams coming out on it. You had Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams coming out on it. He held a press conference with some of the young folks out there because he was concerned about the protocol and how this police officer behaved out there. And then you have the you have the head of the union, Pat Lynch, who basically, and we understand he is the head of the union and you're supporting your police officers. But it would be good when you can say that we stand by our police officers that are standing here and doing the job and they're doing it the correct way. But those police that are not doing their job, we are not going to tolerate that. You never, ever hear that. You hear come out his mouth and
Good
say,
luck.
that the police are always right. You must obey the police. You obey the police and you get punched in the face. I'm telling you, I'm not saying that folks took it before, but you can't expect folks to take this today. Eric Adams got out there and he even held a workshop, basically talking to the young folks in a sense of how to interact for the young folks if they are approached by the police. And the last caller today on the on-air show, Patricia, she said, she called and she was very upset and she said, why is the onus always put on us? Yes, we are supposed to carry ourselves in a proper manner. And if we are breaking the law, you don't see us, if the police are not abusing us, doing their job, they're doing their job, and we accept that. But when they are abusing folks, that cannot be tolerated. And I just wanted to start off, and Larry, I start off with you because you head up an organization. And, one of the things is, and I hear Reverend Sharpton say, and I was there during the early stages of Reverend Sharpton where the rhetoric was much stronger in the streets. But as he says, as I got older and I got wiser, I became, quote unquote, more responsible in what I say, because what I say can motivate other people to do things, or it could be taken out of context, and I don't want people to get hurt. But as the young lady said, the onus put on us. You head up an organization. You got young folks that some are just not going to sit there and tolerate some of the things and do some of the things, even though there was a kind of a rowdy protest this past Friday about this. There's another protest coming up tomorrow about this incident. What do you say about the incident, and what do you tell your members, and what do you tell young folks in a sense of dealing with the police out here?
Well, with regard to the incident, it was outrageous. The officer's conduct was unacceptable. My understanding is, his brother told me when we were in the room together earlier, the policeman has been taken off duty, but has been removed from his regular job, but he's not off duty. He's not suspended. It really remains to be seen what punishment commensurate with his behavior is going to be levied. And I'm glad to see that so many people, Jumaane Williams, Eric Adams, and others came out very quickly, assessed the situation, and in fact gave the correct characterization that the officers were wrong. What amazes me about not only this incident, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but there are going to be more incidents like this. I think that somehow that these incidents are related overall to our general state in the country at this time. The economy is good for the less than 1%, but for the rest of us, it's crap. People say low unemployment, but it's low unemployment at slave wages, and nothing is more frustrating than working 40 hours a week and still not having enough money to pay your rent. A lot of these kids can't even afford to get back and forth to school. A lot of them have to catch the subway. So the worsening economic condition, the terrible political situation, all of this malaise is kind of working in tandem to produce a greater sense of frustration. And we're going to see more incidents like this. It's almost counterintuitive, Bobby. You would think with everything that has happened with the police in the last 5 years, let's say since Michael Brown, you would think that the cops would have finally gotten the message. And with all the training, the so-called training, because when these things happen, people say training, and so they do training.
And I hate that.
Right, go ahead.
You please explain why.
And
Because
I'm going to tell you why I hate
As a
it.
cop, tell
I'm
us
telling you as an executive, I'm going to tell you why I hate training. Because what happens is the black and brown community, as soon as somebody, let's use the Pantaleo, right?
Right.
He chokes out Eric Garner, everybody said we need training. They already got the training. We need to hold the cops accountable for the training. That you almost giving them an out, because the police department, I'm telling you, they're sitting in the back room saying, all right, let's just get some training together and keep them Negroes quiet.
Right.
That's what they're doing. But we're not saying, hey, well, hold on, he has $100,000 worth of training.
Right.
Use of force, emotionally disturbed persons, shooting, driving. Let's go through that.
Right.
Let's go through that. What part of his training that he already had? You want to give him some new training? Fine. But we want to hold him accountable for the training that you already gave him.
Exactly. And I think the cop who did the punching, he had other reports of
that always
excessive
happens.
force. And that goes back to the whole why don't other cops say anything or break the blue wall of silence and actually come out and say, no, you know what, there's something wrong here. And that's the only way this is going to change, is if the good cops speak out about the bad ones and do something about it. Because that goes back to that other case too, Fatin, of the one that I was covering in Jersey, of the former police chief who was indicted on federal hate crime charges. And it was only because another cop secretly recorded him for over a year working with the feds. So it's until officers and, superiors actually do something about it, that's the only way this stuff is going to change.
And they're not going to do it because every cop want to go along and get along, No one wants to be Corey Pegues, an outcast for 21 years. But I knew that I could be in a policy-making position. I don't care if you like me, but now I'm running policy. Right. What happens in this precinct is under my command. You don't have to like me, but you're going to respect these black and brown people for 8 hours.
Bobby, I want to ask you, and I know you want to comment about this, and you can make your comment, but I want to ask you a specific question. Do you think that if these police officers continue to do these type of incidents and their punishment is not only jail time or losing their job, but losing their pension. I mean, and I'm talking about not even getting back what they put in, but losing their pension outright. Do you think that will make a difference?
Oh, I definitely will, right? And to Nitha's point, right, I do believe there are more decent, good cops than there are cops who do the wrong things. And what Corey just said, to have them break through just getting along to actually do what they gave an oath to, right? And so the more that they see that it's putting a really, really bad mark on themselves and it can put their pensions at risk, I think that'll be more than enough motivation for some of them to just say, hey, you can't do that, man. I want my job. I do my job the right way. What you're doing is wrong. Now, I believe a lot of that conversation takes place today, but it doesn't make it out of the squad car. Or you'll see guys and gals that'll say, you know what, can I get a transfer and let me get away from this person because this person is going to pull me down, right? Which is no different than what happens in corporate life, right? So if you're sitting next to somebody who's just annoying the heck out of you, you tell your boss, can I move my seat? You got to do something about that, right? The stakes are much greater with police officers, though. And Larry, the point you made about this lack of accountability, for him to be taken off of street duty and put, I guess, at a desk, that sounds like a paid vacation, right?
It is. Absolutely, it is. It's a paid vacation. And until we hold Police Commissioner O'Neill, you got to have your foot on his neck. I'm telling you, police don't understand until you knocking down the doors at one police plaza. If you got three people, you got Eric and Giuliani saying, oh, yeah. He's like, oh, okay, that's just Eric and Giuliani. Right. Where's Yvette Clark? Where's Hakeem? Everybody. Yeah. When you got everybody on his neck, because he works at the privilege of the mayor. Yeah. The mayor's going to grab him and say, listen, O'Neill, what's going on here? What are we doing? We got Eric Garner, you got the subway thing, you got this, you got that. What's going on? And we do know, like you said, every cop isn't a bad cop. But in this profession, you got to understand this. The only profession in America where the citizens give you the right to take a life.
Exactly.
If deadly physical force is being used against you or yourself, imminently, the citizen says, okay, you can kill him. That's a heavy responsibility.
Exactly.
Everybody that's a cop, some of them need to be at McDonald's because they all not built to be cops.
Now they're talking about they putting together a unit. Now this came out this week.
The
but
500.
quietly, they're putting out this unit where that they're going to have this plainclothes unit in the subway patrolling the subway.
500 cops.
500 cops with no video cam.
That's
no
wrong.
video cam.
That's wrong.
Right. So this past Friday, you had a lot of folks, especially young folks, that held a protest, and it was hop the turnstile protest.
And they hopped the
turnstile without paying a fare to protest this here, to get this message out that this is not tolerable. That now you're going to put a gang of blue. In the trains, right. And they're gonna run roughshod, and there is no. At the end of the day, there's no video cam, there's no accountability there. And then when you take out your camera to record, which you still have the right to record, they try to confiscate your camera. Right. And if you say, look, I have the right to do that, the next thing you're resisting arrest, and then you're in handcuffs, and then you have a record, or you're fighting to get out of this.
And this wasn't
the reality
only.
Is that, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
The reality is that the cops are there not to protect everybody, but to protect a certain group.
Can we all say Desmond Robinson? This is what you're telling me right now.
Let's talk about it. Desmond Robinson was shot by another officer.
Desmond was a cop.
He was a black officer in the train patrolling, and he was shot by a white officer. And what's so sad is that the police union, guess who they backed?
The officer
that shot Desmond Robinson.
Of course.
Then they try to put on Desmond Robinson. He didn't have on the color of the day.
Was he acting aggressive?
He's a cop. What are you talking about?
Friendly fire, Bob. It was friendly fire.
Friendly fire.
So, Omar Edwards worked for me, too.
Oh, okay.
Oh, really?
I broke him in. I was a commander PSA 2. So what people don't know out there in the world, never in the history of the NYPD has an off-duty white cop been shot by a white cop black, purple, green,
Any
or
cop.
orange cop. We can say Omar Edwards. We know Desmond Robinson, and we could go down the list.
And
It's
then
been
you
about
had the
7 or
officer
8.
in Harlem where he was chasing a suspect in the streets.
That's Omar Edwards.
Now,
That's
Omar
who
Edwards,
worked
when
for
he had
me.
he had a badge behind around his thing.
He
And
just
he
walked
gets
out
shot.
of the precinct. He just walked out of the precinct and saw 2 guys breaking into his car. That's what he did.
but
He ran and chased the guys.
It
And
shows you the racial nature of policing.
because that mindset is black man with I lived this. Black man with gun, perp. White man with gun, they hesitate. I'm telling you, I seen
we've
it.
seen
it.
They
We've
go,
seen it
he
too.
got to be a
We
cop.
know they hesitate.
He must be a cop. Black or Hispanic, Indian,
Criminal.
automatically. They said we're gonna be judged by 12, then by 6. I'd
Carried
rather
by
take
6.
it. I'd rather take it to the
I
trial.
like what Black Thought said. Black Thought said the color of the day, white.
Yes.
See, and that's another great point too. Like, why isn't there more extensive background checks on who becomes an officer? Because if you look at just in Philadelphia, where recently I think it was 13 officers that were suspended because of the investigation that an outside independent group did, just looking into their social media and found a whole bunch of racist posts with like actually hundreds of officers that are still being investigated, but they so far I think suspended about 13. So why did it take an outside independent entity to find this for something to happen? Why wasn't this done before? Why were these folks able to join the force and, like you said, have a license to kill? You're in charge of public safety, overseeing communities, and when you have racist ingrained thoughts, those absolutely will play out into actions that will have severe consequences for people.
Would you ever take your clothes off, they dirty, and throw them outside for people to see?
Would I-
No.
No, right.
Right.
So we're talking
but-
about, no, that's because you brought that up. That was good. These police departments don't want to air their dirty laundry.
Right.
No.
They don't want to air it.
Why are they hired in the first place? Like, why isn't this background check done?
Because it's a culture.
Yes.
It's a culture
Exactly
that has existed for generations.
That's correct.
It is so deeply ingrained that it would literally take a political earthquake to, in fact, dislodge it.
Yeah.
But
And,
you know what,
and that's why
a
we're
great
going to
point.
continue to have this problem.
It's even worse than that, Larry. It is an employment bank for white folks.
Oh,
I
yeah.
agree with
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Listen,
And you know, I can honestly say, I'm going to put this out here, and I'll probably get some pushback from some people, but I honestly believe that every cop that comes out of the academy, they drunk the juice already.
Yeah. Yeah.
They actually they think they're going to jump off buildings. It's going to be Hawaii 5-0 SWAT. They're ready to do the job the right way. I'm telling you. Until they get to the precinct, and you put this 1-year rookie with the 10-year cop.
Yep.
And the 10-year cop is like, don't drive,
Slow
don't talk
down.
on the radio. No,
Right.
we don't do, because the rookie is going from A to Z. The 10-year guy, he's starting at H. And the cop is saying, the rookie is saying, no. They didn't teach us that.
Right.
Use of force is verbal, slap, kick, punch, gun. You went right to slap. What's going on here?
Exactly.
And then, like you said, then because they getting it's a generational job, second, third, fourth generation. So grandpa, who was a cop in the '60s, is telling his great grandson how to police. We don't police the way you did in the '60s.
Right.
Out here in 2019.
Yeah, you're so right, because that family tree, that different generation, that's what has more sway than the official $100,000 worth of training and everything. You know, my nephew, he's in the police force, and I actually saw that when you just said they come out of the academy, you know, drinking the Kool-Aid.
Eager.
That was him. And he's 10, 12 years in now. And I could see he's taking his foot off the pedal.
Yeah.
He's like, you know what? And part of it is, you know, if I get my 20, right? And he was in the Coast Guard. He was in the Coast Guard. So, you know, he wants to do the right thing. But then he says, you know what? If I could avoid certain things, I'm going to avoid it. Right? If I'm confronted, I'm going to do the right thing. But if I can avoid it, I'm going to avoid it. We all said on this show numerous times, it is one of the hardest jobs out there. Yeah. But what makes it even harder is when you got people in there who just don't want to do the right thing. Right. And now you're trying to look out for yourselves, but also look at this person who you may be partnered with or you on an investigation with, and they want to cut corners, they want to do things for their own personal interests out there. And then I get it, right? You can feel lost out there. It's like, and we see the same thing with, the president, right? Because we always scratch our head. Why aren't more people coming out like they are now in this Ukraine situation to like say something's not right, right? It's going to take people to stand up to say, I've had enough of this and we have to change.
Well, and speaking of the president, I just want to say too real quick of Trump during the Trump era too. Remember, he said, "Oh, I think it's okay for cops should rough up suspect when you're putting them in the car. Don't put your hand over their head." And also remember during the Obama administration, the DOJ actually worked to, and these were small incremental changes that took a really long time for it to happen, to get like consent decrees with different police departments. And when Trump came into office, this DOJ under him and Sessions, they stopped a majority of them and halted them. So under his administration, things are even worse. So it's like it comes from the top all the way down. And remember the police union back to Donald Trump during the election.
Before you do that, Corey, I got a question for Corey, because we talked about this last week around the militarization of the police. So, can you just shed some light around what it's like when there are federal grants, there's former military gear and training and all that stuff that becomes available to the local police? What's the reaction? They like kids at Halloween, like gimme, gimme, gimme. Like, what's it like?
Well, listen, New York, L.A., Chicago, Detroit, big cities. Maybe we might need a tank. We might have a riot.
Okay.
But Tuscaloosa, they don't need no tank.
Yeah.
Where did he get killed, Mike Brown? In St. Louis,
right.
They put Ferguson. They got 50 cops. They got MP5s. They got tanks. They got all. You would think you was in Iraq.
They got
So-
through,
I thought it was Palestine when I saw when I saw the picture in the New York Times. I swear I'm not
You
making this
couldn't
up.
believe it.
Yeah.
I thought it was a bunch of Palestinian kids facing off the Israeli military. That's exactly the tanks, the uniforms,
And
the
the
equipment.
NYPD has tanks.
Yep.
21 years, I never seen the deployment of the tank.
Yep. And you're right. All these
you never saw the tank?
all
No,
these.
we don't
Don't pull it out. Huh?
But we have 40,000, so it's kind of hard to compare NYPD to other places.
Right.
But if NYPD, now we done had Crown Heights,
Yeah,
Washington
9/11,
Heights,
yeah.
we done had all kind of stuff
there,
with
Crown
no
Heights.
tanks. Ferguson,
Exactly.
you got 4 tanks, and like you said, you look at the TV set. This is America.
It came close in Crown Heights because that
And-
was
Right. Oh, yeah.
that was a rough
Actually,
one.
and,
Let me-
and a lot
but
of
let me
these
ask you
small
this.
towns have them. Like it's not only Ferguson, a lot of them.
Yeah.
And again,
Right.
under Trump, again he escalated that. Like it already started under Obama, but under Trump he expanded it and boasted about it. Like, oh, I'm bringing allowing police departments to take the old military equipment, and it's a good thing. So that increased under him too.
Let me ask you this, Corey, and then we'll move on to some other stories. How did you deal with this, honestly? Because I was never a cop, but doing security, I've did security, for an organization, and then I've did security for an individual. And when you bond with your team.
Right.
There's no ifs, ands, and buts about, and you are protecting what you have to protect.
Right.
For instance, when I was doing security for Reverend Sharpton, Reverend Sharpton didn't want us to carry weapons. That was what he said. He didn't want us to carry weapons because we had somebody who was going to bond us and get us weapons. Reverend Sharpton said no. But what Reverend Sharpton did is he did pay for us to get proper training and how to deal with certain situations. So he did pay for that for us to go out there and do that. But there's a bond that you build with your brother and sisterhood when you're working, and you're police officers. You are the top notch out there besides the military. Right. You have that brotherhood of being an officer, but then when you have an officer that does something wrong, how do you deal with that? Where you have the brotherhood that's looking at it and say, you know what, he did or she did cross the line, but you should understand how it is out here in the streets. And yeah, he wound up busting that guy's head, but look at the situation that was at hand. How did you deal with that as a person in charge, as a black man, and understanding excessive force on black folks, and also being part of that Brotherhood of Blue, because you were part of that Brotherhood of Blue. How did you deal with that?
So forget about me being a commander. I mean, I always knew I was black before I was blue. I'm black before I'm blue.
That should have been the
Early in
title
my
of the
career- Yeah. Well, I'm telling you a story real quick. Early in my career, one of my first arrests, I think it was like my second arrest. I was on foot patrol, ended up locking the kid up, whatever it was locked up for. So I had no transportation. I had to call a car, 2 white cops come. I don't know why I had to go to the car, but I hear him screaming. I thought he was Houdini, got out of the cuffs. No, they was beating his ass.
Wow.
They was beating him on the ground. And the sergeant came, and now here I'm a rookie. I got like a year. I'm first generation. No other piggies but me. And I told the sergeant, listen, that's not my arrest anymore. They just put their hands on. I don't even know why they hit him, but I'm not about that. That's not what I'm here for. I take care of my wife and kids, and I'm not depending on you taking this pension from me. And if that ever happens again, I'm calling 212-741-8401. That's the number of internal affairs. So early on, it was like, don't do nothing in front of piggies. Like, I would walk into roll calls as a commander and say, you do something in front of me, I'm telling. So we're going to take all the gray area out. If it was a snitch, it was me. I'm telling everything.
But how did you deal with that?
I dealt with it because, listen, either you want to go along or get along.
Right.
I never went to the parties. I never did none of that stuff. I just hung out. I came to work and did what I had to do. So they respect. I don't know if they respected me, but they knew if they did something in front of me, somebody got to take a stand. Remember, I was with the 100 blacks in law enforcement who care. So, you know, I was on some different stuff then. Like, we wasn't playing. So they knew who I was about. There was times I had to call Eric and Noel to come to my precinct because I had some problems with some people that didn't look like me. And you know, Noel come in big as you, 6'5", 6'6", and he coming in. They got their suits and ties, and Eric and them. And it was like, oh, the commander be like, oh, Corey, I didn't know it was that serious. Well, I tried to tell you, we're not playing these games. You're not going to disrespect me or my black and brown
community. Did you ever
community.
think about, you know, and the only reason why I bring up Serpico, and I bring up Serpico from the perspective if those that, because there's some young folks that are watching out there. Serpico was an NYPD police officer, the detective, and he basically he wind up, the word snitched on cops. He told on some rogue cops, and they set him up, and he got shot in the face. I bring up his name because when I reached out to Serpico, Serpico came on OpenLine. He came on the on-air show, and he said, I don't do much interviews. The reason why I'm coming on OpenLine is because of our track record of what we do. And he said that you seem to be fair. You seem to, when you don't paint the whole police department with a broad brush. But he talked about being set up and how that was real. Right. And if they set up Serpico as a white man, right, did you worry about that, or you didn't even worry about that?
No, I never even worried about it because I just walk with God. If something happened, it was going to happen, but I always was at the ready. So if they was going to come at me, they might get me, but I'm taking out 2 or 3 of them. We're on the front page of every newspaper in the world. I'm defending me. I'm not going to play this game with them.
I saw you on the front page. Was that a real the New York Post?
Exactly.
They call you Thug Cop.
Yeah, they call me.
Amazing.
I didn't even really have a problem with that headline. I just had a problem they didn't put a slash because I used to be a thug and then I was a cop. But they made it. You know, the papers are good. New York Post, they put Derek Jeter on the left, who's retiring, and they got a picture of me with big words, Thug Cop. They know how to sell papers.
But this situation with the police not having body cams, this new unit they want to put in the subway, people should not let that go. They should not because that is a formula for disaster. That's a signal that you can do whatever you want. That is literally.
I would wonder, you know what's more important for me with the community elected officials? I would demand is what's the background of all 500 cops?
Right.
What's the background, one?
Right.
What was the, recipe to get in?
Right.
Right? What was the qualifications to get in?
Right.
Any generational guys? All the chiefs, sons, daughters? I would say if you're going to have a unit like that, at least give me 10 years plus.
Right.
Fatim, before we move on, there's a couple of questions from our viewers out there to Corey, right? So one from Anthony Long. Will there be a movie based on the book Once a Cop very soon?
Oh, yeah, we got a documentary that's out right now. You could go to Guardian.com. It's called A Cops and Robbers Story, and it'll be in movie theaters next year. And I just signed a major television deal with Legendary Films. They're going to do a story on my life, like a Power, Empire, The Wire.
That's great. Another one from Anthony Long. Being a member of Notorious Supreme Team, it's surprising that you became a cop. Were you surprised at that as well?
I wasn't really surprised. I mean, it was like my life has been chapters, you know. I was a drug dealer. I closed that chapter. Went in the Army, closed that chapter. Went in a cop, closed that chapter. Now I'm a motivational speaker and a best-selling author. So all my friends actually respected me when I went from selling drugs. They used to actually write me letters when I was in the Army. It's like, yo, you made it, man. We counting on you, man. You one of the few that made it. And like Eric Adams always said, I just ran a little quicker and probably jumped a little higher than some of my friends that's dead or in jail.
Yeah, that's good. Last one from Edward Latson. I want to know if there's an increase in suicides in the NYPD, or is the media just reporting it more?
I don't think that they're downplaying it, but it's an increase in suicides around America, and we fixate on cops because cops got guns.
I want to piggyback off of that. And
Yeah.
I'm glad Bobby brought that up because I was going to zero in on that. Friday, Channel 2 did a story where you had an NYPD officer, former military guy, who spoke to some of the councils out there that the NYPD have in place for cops that may have issues. He said that he felt anxious, but he didn't feel like he wanted to hurt anyone or hurt himself. They wind up taking his gun, put him on desk duty, and isolating him. And he said that made it worse for him. You understand what I'm saying? And he said, and I want you to comment on this, and I know you're retired, but he basically said that the NYPD is not really about helping the officers. This is more about smoke and mirrors. What is
And you know, I totally agree with the cops. So the police department is in a catch-22 situation with the suicide. Now, you come in and say that you're feeling down. Like, hey, I went through a divorce as a cop, and I can remember being on patrol, and I was crying because me and my ex, you know, we was going through it, and my partner drove me back to the precinct and said, Sarge, I can't go out with him. He's gonna hurt somebody. But they understood. They didn't take my guns. I'm going through a divorce. But what happens in NYPD now? They just immediately take your guns. Like, you got this. Cops are human. If you cut me, it's gonna be red.
Right.
It's gonna be red like everybody else. So when the doctor goes and says he has a problem, they don't take him out to OR because he's having some psychological problems. The stockbroker has some problems, marital problems. They don't take him off, you know, Wall Street. You understand what I'm saying? But cops immediately, they're reluctant because the machismo of the job is carrying that gun.
Wow.
So when you take that gun away from them, most cops feel like you're taking
vulnerable.
all of their power. Not only that, but now the entire precinct know what they call you in the rubber gun squad.
rubber gun?
That's police
From
jargon.
the rubber
That's-
room
right?
in the Board of Ed.
Exactly. That's
To the
yeah,
rubber
so that's
gun in the
police
police
jargon. Like,
department.
yo, there's something up with him. They took his guns. So it's really a touchy situation. But I think they got to do something. They have to try to fix this because, I mean, we don't just have cops. You had a chief just. Silks killed himself.
Yep.
You had a chief, an inspector killed himself. Right. My guy married. So it's going running the gamut in the NYPD. And I don't think it's about police work. It's other issues people are having.
Yeah.
People have issues. They're human beings. I went to psych services as a cop to come on a job. You know the next time I saw the psychiatrist?
When you was leaving.
When you were leaving?
Never.
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 Wow.
And that's
So you're talking 21 years. You're talking about having me working the 75th precinct, 67th precinct,
Brooklyn.
all the most violent projects in America in Brownsville. And I don't get no psychological. Like, and I'm not saying
That's
do that every
crazy.
year because it's 40,000, but can we do a 3-year rotation?
Right.
Can we do something to
Right.
find out what's going on? Are you okay?
Wow.
You're in the 75th precinct. Y'all had 80 homicides in the last 3 years.
Wow.
Are you okay?
That's crazy.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
One more question that came in from Pat Johnson. She said there's a general election coming up in November 5th. One of the questions
Tuesday,
That's
this
right.
Tuesday.
that's
Everybody vote.
about the structure of the Civilian Community Review Board, CCRB, and they want to expand it from 13 members to 15, and 5 will be appointed by City Council.
Correct.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, it's great. You have to take, so it's even. It's an even flow. The mayor gets his picks, the city council get their pick, but now you gotta break it up, because now you can add 2 or 3 more where nobody's involved, and they would almost be the deciding vote.
Got it.
And you gotta give them more power. The CCRB for police, I'm telling you, it's a joke. Going down to CCRB, cops are like, okay, it's a day off. I'm going out, because they don't have the power to discipline.
Wow.
They just do recommendations to the police commissioner. So the police commissioner wields all the power.
There you go. Well, this is the heart of the matter. This is the heart of it. The police, in a way, there's a parallel between Trump and the police. And maybe that's why they have this synergy, you know, this symbiotic relationship, because you know the 330,000 member National Fraternal Order of Police endorsed Trump.
Right, that's what I was saying.
They endorsed Trump. So Trump feels he is above the law. He said the Second Amendment of the Constitution was, I don't know if the Second Amendment, Second Clause, or whatever it is in the Constitution, allows him to do whatever he wants to do. You know, he thinks that he is above the law. In a way, many of the police feel that for the most part, and there's an exception to every rule, but for the most part, they are beyond the reach of the law, especially when it comes to their word versus the word of a civilian. Now, it's interesting, on police corruption, there are cases every day when police are found guilty of corruption. But when it specifically comes to incidents where police abuse their authority vis-a-vis a civilian, invariably the police almost win. I mean, the
But
number.
you know, but see, the police got this little caveat, and I don't know if they're gonna have to try to get rid of this. They say they was in fear of their life.
Right.
Who am I to get in your brain?
Right.
Who am I to get in your brain? When do I know your fear,
Right,
your
right.
fear? And that's what people, they see these cops getting off on all these unarmed shootings, but they don't realize that once the cops say that I was in fear of my life,
Right.
almost across the board,
Yeah.
a jury, trial by jury,
Right.
or a judge is going to get them off.
Your mic, Bob. Your mic.
Your mic.
Yeah, there's a caveat with that, and it has to be realistic, and it has to be
That a normal person might have.
yes. It can't be fantastic.
Yeah, but you know,
You're a
But
mile
they use
away.
it for
yeah,
everything.
but we just
yeah.
saw, you know, Atiana Jefferson, right? So in our house, right? And so that officer didn't
said-
identify himself, but at some point he's going to say that he was fearful of it, right?
He
But
already
based
did
on
say
what
it,
he
I
said-
think.
You're
Yeah,
talking,
he
you're
said it,
talking
yeah.
about the cop that said, let me see your hand, bang, bang, bang.
Yeah,
Let me
yeah.
give you a chance to see your
Right,
hands.
right.
Yeah.
Through the window, a silhouette through the window,
Same
right?
In her own home.
In her own
I
home.
tell you. Well,
Yeah, and-
we're gonna move on. And
Right.
one of the things here, you know, we just didn't have Brother Corey said I can talk some politics too. So
Dump
Well,
Trump.
everything is
we're gonna-
politics. It's all interconnected.
Exactly.
It's all.
But you know, Corey, we appreciate you, you know, coming in, and of course you're gonna hang with us the rest of this show. But coming in to talk about this, because there's a lot of officers, once they're done, man, they're just moving on. And I'm glad that there is some film about your life. You know, you have the book, and now television and film, man. That's a good thing. So you just keep us posted on that.
The movie's going to be called what again?
A Cops and Robbers story.
Okay.
And we got a 20-minute piece on theguardian.com. You could just put my name or a Cops and Robbers story, and you'll see a 20-minute snippet.
Okay,
Interesting.
fantastic.
Interesting. Well, there's so many stories that happened this week here. I'm going to start with this one, and it's interesting. Back in 1998, during that time, the Republican-led House voted to begin an impeachment inquiry into President Clinton, where 31 Democrats sided with Republicans, and the White House breathed a sigh of relief that the number was not significantly larger. Fast forward to this past week, where Nancy Pelosi and her House, the Democratic-led, held a vote on the impeachment inquiry, and it was pretty much partisan down the line. It was 232 to 196 votes made clear that the accelerated impeachment inquiry will continue, but right down the line. And even with the information that so far has come out against Donald Trump, the Republicans are holding steadfast. And you had 2 Democrats that sided with the Republicans. Bobby, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's you know, I look at the shifting storylines, right? And so if you think about what happened this Ukrainian deal, it started with denial to, okay, we'll release the transcript. It was a perfect call. And then you start to find out that there was a cover-up to it, right? All of a sudden, the transcript and other conversations prior to Ukrainian was put in a secure safe, which is unusual. That's not the type of material that is considered that sensitive. And so now you're getting more folks who are coming out. They attack whistleblowers. So they're attacking individuals as opposed to saying this is what you want people to do in terms of governing. And so you then see the Republicans who rally around, and they're not arguing the merits of the conversation. They are actually arguing about the procedure, which is telling in itself. So here's the next pivot I see was going to happen, which is, okay, because now the procedure is going to be made public. So, okay, we can't argue that anymore. We're going to go back to, well, was it really that bad? You know, what he did, was it really that bad? And that's what these 2 Democrats, one in Jersey and one in Minneapolis, who voted no, that's their argument, which is, well, we don't know if it's hit the level of really abuse of power. But I believe what's going to be revealing, right, if you just look at that conversation alone, I think an argument could be made to say, it's really not that bad. But when you add it to his history of covering up and the thing that is going on now to discredit the U.S. intelligence agencies, he has Bill Barr traveling the world. He, some UK officials just released a statement saying they were shocked at the questions that they were asked to undermine the U.S. intelligence to come up with basically fake information to say that it wasn't Russia who did this, it was Ukraine who did it, and it's whether it's to legitimize his election or, as many of us suspected, he is deep in the pocket of Russia to just run cover for them. And then you look at what's going on with Syria. All of a sudden, the troops are not coming home. They're going down to protect oil. Oil for who? Saudi Arabia.
Right.
So he is doing things that in what the Democrats are saying is like he is putting our national security at risk. So the Ukrainian issue, coupled with all the others, to me paints a very compelling story about putting national security at risk.
And I think it's sad to even say this, but I think a lot of it is going to boil down to what we always talk about is going to be messaging and who shapes the narrative. Because unfortunately, we live in 2 separate worlds where facts don't even matter, even though they do to us and to most sane people. We like to think so. But it's about who is going to shape this, because a lot of it is about public opinion and what you're going to get them to believe and listen to. And if even Trump said something where he might do a fireside chat and read out the Ukraine call, which is so crazy in and of itself. But that's what, the Republicans have been tremendous. We've talked about this on the show in terms of putting out sound bites, in terms of taking over the narrative and getting people to believe their side. And they have their entire outlets, their machine, from Fox News down to all right-wing radio, all of that. So it's incumbent on, from Pelosi all the way through all the Democrats, to make sure that they hone in on that and get the people always with them. Like right now, if you look at polling, it is in their favor, where a lot of people are in favor of this investigation of impeachment. But they have to make sure that they continue to get out the facts, get out the info, but most importantly, make sure that that is put in a way that people understand it, and don't allow the Republicans to hijack the conversation and take over, because that's what they're going to do.
Go ahead.
I think this election is going to, remember, he didn't get the popular vote. It's going to go right back to the swing states. And if the Democrats don't get in those swing states and get votes, he's going to, the last 4 presidents had 2 terms, right? The last one only had 1, was Bush 1, right? So it's all in his favor to be here again. But what are we going to do differently? We, the people of the United States, what are they going to do different?
I think the situation will become more fluid than we might expect. As Nither already alluded to, Trump is slipping in the polls. Even amongst Republicans, he's slipping in the polls. He's down now to where he was like in the 90s with Republicans. He's down to 70. The most recent poll showed him with 74%. If we go back and if we go back to a couple of months ago and we look at the situation, people were saying, without a doubt, Trump is going to be reelected. Impeachment is a waste of time. It's not going to have any effect. As soon as it became clear to people that this thing was going forward, a change began to occur in the electorate. And a change has already occurred in the polls. We know basically what the bottom line outcome is going to be. The House is going to impeach. The Senate is not going to find him guilty because they are utterly bankrupt. They are part of the Trump cult. They see their fortunes and his fortunes as inextricably bound together. But what is changing is the disposition of the American voters. And I think, I would even make a prediction that even in the red states are not all red. Right. They are majority red. Right. The blue states are not 100% blue. They are majority blue. And I would predict that even in those red states, as we progress through this, because I don't think the Senate procedure is going to conclude before Christmas. I think that this thing is going into, and I think to their mistake, that the Republicans want to take this into, but I think that they really don't understand that while they may have this unity amongst one another, because not one Republican, not one voted for the inquiry, not one, they hung together. But they don't understand that their thinking and even the thinking of the people from whose districts they come, there's some difference there. And I think that Trump is going to decline further in the poll. He got booed at the MMA. Even I thought that was his crowd.
At the World Series also.
He got booed. Well, the World Series,
but
that's
last night in
DC.
Madison Square Garden. Madison Square Garden, UFC 244. And he was there with his crew, Kevin McCarthy, and both his sons.
I think Peter King was there too.
And there were boos last night, 20,000 strong in there. But of course, his son and the Trump side is saying people loved us, chanting USA, USA. Actually, the winner of the main event, Jorge Masvidal, he beat Nate Diaz. He is a Trump supporter. He's Cuban-born. His parents from Cuba. He's Cuban and Peruvian. And he said what he admires about Trump is that he's a badass. And then the other connection to UFC is Dana White, the owner of UFC. He actually, when he was trying to get the sport started, the only place that would allow him a venue were the Trump properties. And so they go way back there in terms of making money. But when you think about the sport, right, and it's not to disparage anybody who enjoys it, it is a bloodthirsty sport. And so I can get why some people would say, I like the tough talk of Trump, right? Because he does talk tough like they do in MMA. But he got booed. People I know who were there last night said, "Oh no, there were signs. There were people protesting outside. Out there. So they're going to spin it to say, no, I was loved in New York City, which is not true."
There was a question this is interesting. There was a question that was put to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi last week, and the question was basically, will this impeachment main focus just be on this whole thing with the Ukraine call, or will it be far-reaching? And she basically said it could be far-reaching. Now, I'm not saying this to criticize. I don't watch Rachel Maddow. I just don't sit up and watch talk shows all day. I have a life. But I was watching Rachel Maddow the other day, and I was discussing it with Jennifer, and she said, "Oh, you got to be careful because Rachel kind of interjects her personal opinion." Well, I think it was Friday night with Rachel Maddow's show. She did something that I was very impressed with. Stopped me dead in my tracks. Because what she did is she used reports written by top journalists for the Washington Post and Politico. And she started to connect the dots. And she went back further than this Ukraine call. She went further that this was done before when Ukraine was trying to get to President Trump. But at that particular time, there was that Mueller investigation going on. And you got to realize, I can't call the gentleman that's in jail now that was indicted. Metaphor, yes. And back then, where Ukraine was trying to get to Trump and they were blocking, and then all of a sudden there were certain things and certain handshakes on certain things after Giuliani went over there, and certain things started to open up. So
that's why Manafort, he was the head scratcher. Why would Manafort be his campaign manager out of the blue, right? And so to me, that connection to the Ukraine, which actually became his downfall out there. So so these breadcrumbs have been out there.
They've been out there, but now the journalists, just like in Watergate, they're starting to connect these dots. And even the historians of impeachment and Watergate and whatever, they're saying, like, I know you gave and everybody can have their own prediction, but they said right now, you cannot predict where this is going to go because once these people are subpoenaed and people are called in and they all have to talk and realize that what they say, that they could be in jeopardy and go to jail, things can change, and it can change in a hurry.
So just a question where we got Corey here, right? So, and you just brought up the name. So during your time on the force, Giuliani was the mayor. So what was your experience like with him as a mayor versus what you see now when he's on TV saying the crazy things he's saying?
And he was pro-police also.
Yeah. Well, and if you ever get my book, Once a Cop, I have a chapter dedicated to him. You know what the title of the chapter is?
What's that?
The most racist thing I ever saw.
Wow, is it really?
Yeah, that's the name of that chapter. And if you was around for the police protest on City Hall when he was running against Mayor Dinkins and the cops protested and took over Brooklyn Bridge, stormed City Hall, and Giuliani was there race baiting. They had signs calling Dinkins the N-word. They was carrying nooses and everything. I was a rookie cop. So you have police trying to police. I'm a rookie cop, and they got like lieutenants and captains like trying to go through the barriers. I couldn't stop them.
Wait. You see, that's what I bang the table. I bang the table, and if I get in trouble, I hope I don't get in trouble. But to understand that, understand what the mayor did, and he led these police, some racists, to call the mayor of the city a nigger. No N-word. He called them a nigger. And they were on the job. They didn't get reprimanded. They did nothing. Nothing. You understand? Do you understand that picture? And a lot of us in the black community, the reason why a lot of black folks didn't support Mayor Dinkins because at the end of the day, we felt he just didn't have any backbone. He didn't stand up. I know his history here.
He wanted to be a nice guy.
He wanted to be a nice guy.
And in leadership, you can't be nice. You got to take a stand. You got to take a stand in leadership.
Exactly. Position. But as time go on, I did not walk in this man's shoes. Mayor Dinkins, I applaud you, and I'm not just saying that because his relationship with WBLS. I applaud because once hindsight, when you get a chance to look at things and then realize or don't realize what a person is going through, then you don't understand how he had to maneuver around these things.
I get it. I'm just saying, Giuliani came in. Black communities, I'm not dealing with you. Spanish communities, I'm not dealing with you. As a matter of fact, I'm sending an army to come through I'm gonna come through your town, and we're gonna lock everybody up.
Exactly. But Mike Bloomberg comes in. Kid gets shot. Timothy Stansbury gets shot in the roof in Brownsville. And I never forget this because we reached out to the police commissioner. And I went through Deputy Mayor Dennis Walcott at the time.
Right.
He called down to Police Plaza, and a white officer hung up on him.
Wow.
So he called back and said, well, I'm going to let you know who I am, get the police commissioner. By the time I walked in here at 10 o'clock, we went on the air. We had Mayor Bloomberg and we had the police commissioner talking about that situation. Not only did the mayor pay for Timothy Stansbury's funeral, the police commissioner said on OpenLine that it was a bad shoot.
Right.
When did you get that before?
Hey, no, you're not going to. And again, like I said on the show earlier, I want one video of Pat Lynch saying that a cop did wrong. Just one.
But you're not going to
One
get it
time,
yeah.
because Pat Lynch represents the union. The minute he comes out,
No, he represents the KKK.
Welcome. Did the Grand Dragon ever say the KKK was wrong?
No, what
The
I'm saying
minute-
is
the
like
minute-
a lot of black and Hispanic cops don't like him.
I don't disagree with you. The minute Pat Lynch comes out and says something against a police officer, he will lose his seat. This is the thing we have to grasp about politicians. And that goes for anybody in any type of elected position, be it a government elected position or elected position in a non-governmental organization. The essence of politics is that the representative is really not representing his or herself. They are representing the people behind them. And the minute Pat Lynch comes out and says this was a bad shooting and that cop deserved, he's out. Because the New York Police Department is dominated by racist and fascist people. And they're not going to elect no non-racist, non-fascist person who is going to criticize the police. The representative of the PBA represents white power.
Yeah.
I said it, white power.
I second it.
You know, that's what he
second it.
represents. And they're not coming out. And Justice Bob, this is one thing I find myself in agreement with Bob. The police, certain departments, historically in municipal government, have been the preserve of white ethnic groups. And the police department was one. The sanitation department was another. The fire department was another. These were the affirmative action institutions for white ethnic groups. Go all the way back to that movie, Gangs of New York. And you will see how municipal government was used by white ethnic groups to move themselves up the socioeconomic ladder. You look at a police job now. You don't even have to be in management to make $100,000 a year.
Right.
The average black kid graduating from college with a master's degree can't make $100,000 a year. But these white kids coming out of these families that have historically been police families can get these jobs with a high school diploma, make $100,000 a year, make more than that with overtime, have live the life of a retire in 20 years. Who can retire in freaking 20 years?
But you know what?
Collect a pension.
But
Collect a pension.
I can't get a black. I have two sons. They don't want nothing to do with the police, and they got a silver spoon
Because
in
of
their
the
mouth.
because
but
of
my
the-
daughter's a cop. My daughter's been in NYPD for 8
Well,
years.
black men, you know,
But I know. But like he said, so sometimes I know, the motivation is money. I'm saying, like you said, $100,000. House, 2 cars, white picket fence. Brother, we made it. And the only way we're going to make change, we got to be in there. So all of y'all don't want this money. You F the police. You don't want to do nothing with the police. Guess who's only going to be controlling our community, but they're going to be making the big bucks.
I want to just move this on. You got to go do football today, Bobby?
Nope.
Oh, okay, cool. Michael Dwyer basically said, no surprise, there, Fatine, Mayor Dinkins had a lot to deal with, just like President Obama, and I agree with you that he did have a lot to agree with. That's why I said hindsight, and when you grow and you realize things, I applaud Mayor Dinkins for becoming the first African-American mayor. I say it to his face. I say it here that I applaud him. But I did disagree with him, and I still disagreed with him when he crossed that picket line of the Korean boycott out there on Church Avenue. I was on that picket line when those Korean grocers disrespected that black female and put their hands on her.
The Kiko Garcia case. So he tried to, choose side. Well, I'm saying, brothers and sisters, I knew when I made commander, I had one shot. And I got this little thing with me. If you give me juice, I'm drinking it. I'm not putting it in the refrigerator. Right. So Dinkins, when you're the man, you got juice, you got to drink. We got a one-shot deal. See, Obama, he drunk his juice to get that second term. You can't. You got to block everything out. You got to just do what you got to do. You can't be trying to be nice to everybody. Dinkins probably the nicest man we ever had. Yeah. But you got to drink the juice, man.
Right.
You got the juice, drink it. And if for 4 years they don't reelect you, at least you could walk out saying,
and remember, right?
I did what I had to do.
The vote was so close that there should have been a recount. And Dinkins was Ball Reports was just so tired and just said, I'm out of it. But there was a lot of stories that if there was a recount, he would have won.
Exactly.
And he would have barely won, but he would have won.
And remember September 10th, 2001, who was the most hated person in New York
Mayor
City?
Giuliani.
Giuliani.
Yep.
Giuliani, that's right. Let's turn to the Democratic candidates. A lot has happened in politics there. You had Beto O'Rourke, who quit his presidential race. He basically said that there was financial strains and lagging popularity. One of the things that caught my attention, and it was nice for him to say, but when he said, "Well, we come in after your guns," I think that was just I understand what you're trying to do, but that right there was it. That was it.
You think that was it?
I think that was one of the things that led to
I don't know
him.
about
Yeah, I'm coming after your guns. No, no.
Yeah, but there's a lot of people. But there's a lot of people on the Democratic side that do want actual, substantive change in that
We
direction.
do. We want change,
Yeah,
but
they didn't
not
say
coming after
he
your
went
guns
on.
like that. No.
Yeah,
You gotta understand, a lot of the NRA, they actually really think that the British is really getting ready to they still gonna come invade us. They really believe that. These NRA people think we getting invaded.
Yeah, but see, the problem with the NRA, I can't even give them a check, and the reason why. Because how can I pat them on the back when it comes down to black folks having the same rights as white folks to defend themselves, and then when the black folk go out there and defend themselves, there's no peep out of the NRA. So at the end of the day, it's a racist organization, and for us as people of color, I know there's black NRA members. So be it. There's a black NRA organization that are out there.
Every black person with a gun should join the NRA. And once they see thousands and thousands and thousands of black applications, they're going to say, whoa.
But remember, the NRA came out against the Black Panthers
Right.
back in the 60s in California
that's what we
for
gotta
having
do.
the same rights that they are trying, that they fight for and protect today. They came out against the Black Panthers back in the 60s.
The NRA is a racist, fascist organization and needs to fall. And I saw a tweet by David Hogue, the young man from the Parkland. He said that he hopes he hoped, because the NRA is being sued, and the NRA itself is talking about proclaiming bankruptcy, declaring bankruptcy. And Hogue is saying that if they go bankrupt, he's going to start a GoFundMe page to raise money to take their building and turn it into a memorial for all the victims of gun violence. And I agree with that.
Right.
Yeah.
So you also had a situation where a poll came out in Iowa basically saying that Elizabeth Warren now is leading in the race out there, and Joe Biden is fading in the polls. You have Elizabeth Warren at 22%. You have Bernie Sanders, your guy, right there. Larry at 19%. You have Buttigieg at 18%. You have Joe Biden at 17%, but he's fading a little bit.
Buttigieg is 18?
Yeah.
18%. Oh, he's rising.
Yeah.
He is rising. You have Klobuchar at 4%, Harris at 3%, and Yang at 3%.
Buttigieg is getting some.
Where's Cory Booker? He ain't on that
He
list.
didn't make the list.
That's Fateen's pick.
What?
Yeah, that's my pick.
He's not on the list.
He's not on the list, man. Some guy over here was talking about Cory Booker a couple weeks ago, man.
Buttigieg is picking up some good support in Iowa, so it'll be interesting in the next few weeks to see how that goes. Just a bit of irony as you read those out, right? So Biden a month ago or so was at the top, right? And now he's falling down. So here's the irony. This whole thing about Ukraine, because he went after who he was worried about, Biden. And Biden's probably not going to be there standing at the end. And so he could have avoided all of this nonsense, but he went after the wrong
Who
person.
he thought,
But let me tell you, for me, my dream match is Biden and Trump. I don't care. I want to see Biden and Trump, two old white men. Biden, I guarantee you, he gonna come from behind that podium and slap Trump right on national TV. I guarantee you. See, Trump is such a bully, and you really look at the candidates, they not gonna be able to deal with it. Trump is no filter. He has zero filter. He's gonna have Warren crying, Kamala Harris. He's a male chauvinist.
I don't think you have Kamala Harris.
He's a male chauvinist.
Yeah, but she'll stand up to him.
They could hold their own though.
Yeah.
Kamala and Warren, they could hold their own.
I don't know if Warren can hold it. I'm a little
I think she
surprised. I
can.
don't know if she can hold it.
I think
She already broke it down against
somebody
Trump. I don't
that's
know.
going to go toe to toe with Trump, and the only person I think honestly
Sanders
that
will
could
go
go.
toe to toe.
Yeah, I think Sanders.
Sanders could
yeah.
go.
Sanders will go
She
toe to
could
toe
go.
with him.
Sanders could go.
Sanders
And Buttigieg will go toe to toe with him.
Wouldn't it be fun to see Biden and Trump? I mean, they would have a fist fight. I promise you. You remember when he went over to Hillary and pointed his finger? That won't happen with Trump. That won't happen with
So
Biden.
again, this poll is the Iowa. It's the
Iowa,
poll. It's
yeah.
not
It's
the
Iowa.
national.
That's
It's
an
not
Iowa
the
poll.
national
Right.
one. So
You know, and the
Remember,
reason why
Iowa is a different kind of primary.
Right.
Yes.
It's a caucus primary.
Correct.
It's not a primary where people go to a vote machine and everybody votes. They had these little caucuses. It's different. Iowa's advantage is that Iowa is the first primary.
And it creates momentum.
Right, it,
Yeah,
create-
it
it creates momentum.
for
But,
someone.
you know, because you necessarily win Iowa doesn't mean you're going to necessarily win
Right.
the national election. But it is the first primary, so it is significant.
Oh,
Don't-
there's somebody calling right now.
That's bad.
Someone calling for.
Yeah.
It's
someone's
Iowa calling
for
right now.
For an attorney.
There you
But
go.
regardless of who it's going to be, I think it's important, even though, Larry, you were saying earlier about, Trump flailing in the polls, I think it's important also to just not underestimate him and underestimate the Republican side, because as long as they maintain, like you were talking about earlier, that it's going to come down to certain states, like, in the last election, it was Michigan and whatever the three states, Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. So it's the same way, like as long as they can maintain, as long as he can have a majority of the hold of his base and then bring in a little bit from the other side
I
too.
don't think
And
he's gonna bring anybody over.
watch what he's gonna do. Actually, he's gonna try to make a play even more so actually for the black vote. He's gonna say he's been trying to do this, right? Like, the lowest unemployment, but he just needs, even if he gets a little sliver of that, even a small percentage,
Tip him
that's
over.
it can tip in his favor. And this is what they're gonna try to do with the Latino vote too, because he did get, what was it? I forgot the percentage.
That's the bigger
I forgot the
concern.
percentage of the.
I love your slogan. I'm using it. What you say?
Which one?
Low unemployment but slave wages.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this.
Classic.
Let me
I'm
ask
hashtag
anybody
that
here.
today.
Let me ask you this, because I listen to and I understand the game that both sides are playing, but honestly, have we seen? Again, we already know about what President Obama put in place, and you want to compare, and I got that. I understand that, but black unemployment. I've never seen black unemployment, unless they're fudging the numbers, I've never seen black unemployment this low. And, I remember during the 80s, during the dot-com era and during President Clinton, a lot of folks were working. And right now, you're seeing a lot of job fairs during the holidays. My question is, have you seen black unemployment this low ever?
So listen, I'm going to jump in because Larry said this months ago,
Right.
right? And it plays off of what you just said you're going to hashtag. When there was slavery, all black people
Were employed.
They just weren't getting paid. And so, it's sort of joking, but it's not joking, right? Which is, there are more positions that people are in. But when you look at They're more entry level. They're in industries that are disappearing, right? So it's easier today for a black person to get a job in retail because most people realize that retail flips over so much, right? There is so many malls and department stores that are, underwater, have gone bankrupt out there, and then that just hurts people. So they move from fast food to the Walmarts to the retail. So the quality of those jobs are not always the best jobs. So yes,
and the
they
wages
are working.
too, what Larry was saying earlier too. And people are working 2 or 3 jobs just to put food on the table, and they still
daughter's
there's
working 2
families
jobs.
that still see. There you go. There's family. Your daughter that's a cop. No, okay. Okay. I was about to say.
A 6-year-old, my grandson, but she has to work 2 jobs.
See, and this is the thing. And there's people. I mean, we all have multiple things, but there's people who are working multiple jobs and still have to go on food stamps and still have to do all kinds of things because they cannot afford to pay their rent, to put food on the table. So all of that, and Fatine, to your point too about low unemployment numbers, you have to remember the black unemployment is still double that of white unemployment. So inequality is still a huge, huge problem. So even though it's lower, and then again, you have to look at what jobs they are, how much people are getting paid, and all of that comes
White
into
unemployment
play.
is about 3.2%, and black unemployment is about 5.8%.
Yeah, so but
that's what it is today.
Here's the other thing, right?
And it used to be where white unemployment may be 7.8 and black unemployment was 15, 16, 17%. I mean, it was really
always,
crazy out the roof.
The spread is always been there. The other thing, just about the type of jobs, right? So other things are connected. You do see a slowdown in immigration, right? So we know there's a lot of jobs that immigrants would take off the books, right? So now some of those opportunities are being made available to Hispanic and blacks. So they may be getting a little bit more wages than what the immigrant received, but comparable to other jobs, it's still low. So those who are paying the wages are saying, wait, I'm paying more in wages. True statement. Am I paying equitably? That's not true. That's not the question that people are being asked of them out there.
Somebody just said something here, and it's interesting. Bring over more immigrants, but it made me go back to what Nitha just said, that Trump is going to possibly play on the black vote. I totally agree. And he's going to go with unemployment. And don't think he's brazen. He'll say anything. He may say, look, bottom line is I got tough on immigration, and because we don't have a lot of illegals here, you folks are working, and even though you're getting those jobs, you're saying, Bobby, the bottom line, they're getting those jobs. So this is very interesting. That's why we have to have this dialogue.
Trump is I don't think he can stay on message, even if he says that.
No. I didn't say I didn't say that. I said he's going to play on it.
Oh yeah,
he's going to play on it. I didn't say
he said that in 16.
Yeah,
he's still saying there's still black people running down there to
but
the White House.
He may get more black folks now.
I don't believe it.
I don't believe it. He may. I don't know.
He may get a little bit more.
He may get a little bit more. He may.
No group voted more overwhelmingly against Trump in 16 than black people.
Folks, I got you.
And I will predict that no group will vote more overwhelmingly against Trump against black people in 2020.
We still could be saying the same thing, Larry. You could be right, and I could be right, that same thing. So it doesn't matter. That's going to happen, that more black folks out of any group is not going to support him, but you may have a few more black folks voting for him
let's say
this
out
time.
of 1,000, he gets 1. Or in the last election, he got 1, and this one he gets 2.
Right.
That's all he's saying.
Well, I don't even think he could stay on message, even if that's the case. What you're saying, the low employment for black, this guy is so out of control. He can't stay on message for 3 days. Imagine he did that for a whole week.
See, but I think that is his message, is to always create chaos and to have people thinking that he's stupid and that he's crazy. And if you look at, there's so many conversations about is he mental?
That he's stupid.
But I think it's actually I think it's very strategic. It's to deflect from certain situations and to keep people guessing while they do their dirt and do all their stuff, and everybody's distracted over there.
What scares me the most is not Trump's so-called stupidity. It's the gullibility of what we were supposed to believe was the superior race in America. For generations, we've been taught that white people are superior to everybody else. And what Trump has shown us is in fact the exact antithesis, the antithesis of this. That not only are they more gullible, but dangerously ignorant. Dangerously ignorant. To the point, so ignorant to the point that they will in fact operate in a way that is against their own best interest.
You know,
It's frightening. It's frightening. The cult. Look at the people he's elevating now. He's bringing these television evangelists into the White House. He just made this one woman, you know, people who are grifters.
Yeah.
That's all they are. They use religion to steal from these poor white people, making them believe that somehow all of this, they actually are perpetrating this idea that somehow Trump is the chosen of God.
Right.
It's insanity.
rule in hell. They'd rather rule in hell than serve in heaven. That's the statement right there.
Here's one to illustrate your point, Larry.
That's it.
One of his chief economic advisors who's doing the deal with China, Peter Navarro, has a degree in economics, but he's written a lot of books where he is anti-China to the point that it's an extreme.
Right.
Don't buy stuff from China that's slowly poisoning you. He has that in his books. He was allegedly found by Jared Kushner looking at the book and a movie he had, Googling on Google. He meets the president gives this. When you look at the books, most of the books that Navarro has written, he cites a source, a Rav Nav or something like that, Navraro, right? But it's a play on his name. He made up a fictitious expert to validate his claims in his books. His co-authors have just found that out, and they are shocked because they believed because he had a degree, because he taught at certain institutions, that he was legit. And now the truth is coming out, and then he's confronted with it, and he said it was just a joke. So he's not even trying to deny his deceit, but he's made so much money.
cut that phone off,
He's made
please.
so much money running a scam. So to your point, a bunch of scammers and grifters.
Right.
Yeah, let me just read this, what Fancy Style Incorporated has written. And Fancy Style has been a guest on our show in the past. Fancy Style Incorporated writes, there are more black Trump supporters than we are acknowledging. As a young black conservative, I can tell you I am friends with many of them. Don't underestimate that. I'm not saying that they're going to make a make a big dent. No. But just understand that they are more than what you may think out there.
Right.
That's all. That's all
I was saying.
Wait,
Yeah.
I also
That's one of them calling Pickett right now.
Yeah.
I also want to talk about this week. Senator Elizabeth Warren proposes a $20.5 trillion health care plan. Bob.
Pickett.
Pat Johnson, well, you call him Bob because I know you want to know.
Is it off? Last time. Elizabeth Warren.
This is live, everybody. This is live.
Elizabeth
This is not
Warren.
pre-recorded.
It sure ain't. Elizabeth Warren proposes $20.5 trillion health care plan. And a lot of folks talk about Elizabeth Warren is the person that has a plan for everything out here. And some of the folks now, with her $20.5 trillion health care plan, as you start to look into it, it's going to start to depend on certain other things happening so that the middle class don't get taxed. So I expect, and I'd like to hear from the team here, that of course she is going to be a big target at the next debate on this $20.5 trillion
Absolutely.
Medicare for all plan.
Listen, there's some analysis that shows over a 10-year period, it's going to cost like U.S. citizens would spend about $52 trillion in health care. Wow. So her plan is to fund it at $59 trillion. And so to fund this, she's basically would have to shut down all private insurance right now, divert the monies that corporations subsidize going into those, what people are paying into those, then tax the wealthy, tax corporations on top of it. And while she says she won't tax the middle class, their taxes will go up indirectly, because if you now don't have to pay a co-payment, that's more money in your pocket, which means that's not deductible. It's going to increase your income. You're now at a higher income tax bracket. That's going to be taxed. So to fund this, everybody's going to pay with it. And the questions that I have about this, right, and we said it before, ideally, I would love that everybody have free health care. To get there, however, it's going, by some projections, if you got rid of private insurance, you're going to have well over 2 million jobs that now disappear. So everybody who works for the Blue Cross, Blue Shield, Aetna, United Healthcare, all of them, they disappear. You don't need those services. So everyone who's working there. The other thing is the amount of money that doctors and hospitals receive. So right now they can get higher rates, and there's a lot of debate around should you normalize the rate they get for certain procedures, but every doctor and hospital gets a certain rate based upon insurance today. If this was to put in place, the amount of money doctors and hospitals receive will go down. So now you'll have that population saying, well, I'm earning less. How is this better for me? And so I think she's going to have a tremendous hurdle ahead of her. The last thing I'll say on this is this, if she's wins the election and she's only in place for 4 years, it's going to take more than 4 years to get this up and running. And so, right, and we saw what happened with the Affordable Care Act, right? He had 8 years, and they were able to dismantle that thing pretty quickly.
That's a good point.
Well, this is why I think she's starting where she's starting, and both her and Bernie are both for this, because you can't start in the middle, like I said, right? You can't say, actually, that was the problem with the ACA, was they compromised way too much in the beginning, even gave up the public option, a whole bunch of stuff, and it pretty much ended up being Romney care, so they compromised right at the outset instead of sticking to their guns. So this is why in her plan, remember, she said taxing the billions, and while I get your, what you said about your income increasing, your other overall costs will decrease, and that's what both her and Bernie have said as well too. And so for them to start over here and then work to wherever they end up getting to, whatever that ends up being a compromise, I think that is a good way to go, because you can't start in the middle and go from there. Like, you do need to start out here and then see what ends up happening.
Bernie's plan is a phased-in plan. Bernie essentially wants to take the Medicare that we have now and expand it each year until everybody is covered. I think the first year he wants to reduce the eligibility because it's driven by age. So now you become eligible for Medicare at 65. He wants to, first year, first phase in everybody up to 55, then everybody 45, and then so on until everybody's in. And I actually think that that's the best way to go. Warren is coming out with this plan because she was challenged in the last debate as to how she was going to pay for it. Because in the last debate was the first time that they really went after Warren. And the challenge came from the people who were trying to dislodge Biden for the centrist vote. Biden, it's actually Buttigieg now that's benefiting from the decline in numbers from Biden. Those people are defecting to Buttigieg because there's a whole question of confidence now. Is Biden, in fact, going to be able to make it to the end of the primary season? He's having difficulty raising money. The day that Bernie had 26,000 people out there in Queens, Biden was trying to have a fundraiser, and they weren't
even fill the seats.
They didn't have 100 people. They had like 85 people there. That's
he's fading.
He's fading. So Klobuchar and Buttigieg came after Warren to ask her how she was going to pay for it. And Klobuchar said, well, at least Bernie's being honest. He's saying there's going to be some tax on the middle class. And then Warren said, well, I'm not going to support any plan that taxes the middle class. So now she's come up essentially with a plan that increases even more taxes on the millionaire, billionaire class. But I think that Bernie actually has the best plan. This phase in Medicare is the most popular program next to Social Security. The two most popular programs in government, Social Security and Medicare. And we've all been beneficiaries, well, our parents anyway, in one way or another.
So just to share a point there, Edward Ladson shares Medicare needs to be fixed first.
Yes.
Then they need to create a mechanism in order to prevent Congress from stealing the funds from it, then to phase it and expand it.
It sounds good. Let me hit a couple things real quick because I have a wedding to do today. I came across a story last week, and I just want to bring to our listeners and bring to the team here. And then there was something else that I'm going to bring up with you. I don't want to stay on it, and I'll tell you why. It's sensitive. But I think the folks need to know about this. First of all, this is about Forsyth County School Board of Education votes against African American history class.
This is in Winston-Salem, Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Wait, say that again. Voted against
African American history. Right. It is, as Bobby said, the Winston-Salem Forsyth County School Board voted against the proposed mandatory African American history class. Last Tuesday night, council members voted on a proposed mandatory African American history class. In the end, the vote was 7-1 against the class. During the 4-hour meeting, 28 people signed up to speak, and all 28 spoke in favor of the class, including one city council person. Once the proposal was shot down, neighbors began to talk, amongst themselves at the meeting. And one of the teachers there at the school said, "We teach British literature in 12th grade. How many people in our classroom at North Forsyth are of British descent? 0. For us not to accept the fact that our students deserve to learn about themselves for at least 1 credit when they get it in 4 other credits, to me, is just not right. That they get the thumbs down or whatever we give for someone showing their backside, because
they don't want us to know our history, because if we learn our history, not only they get exposed, but then we start thinking and doing things differently.
Exactly. Now, the reason why I brought up Nither on this one.
Just one thing before you turn over to Nither. So the 7-1, the explanation they gave was that they need more information.
What's the racial rate?
I think there's three black members on the board, and actually,
voted no?
and one of them actually voted yes. She was the one. She was the vice chair.
7-1.
It was 7-1. Wow. She's the vice chair. So these are the ones who voted. Those are the ones who voted no. The ones with their arms up there. They need more time to look at it. And part of it, they said, well, we have an inclusion program that we can expand, and in the inclusion, they make as electives African American studies, American Indian studies, and some other ethnic ones. So they said there is an option for it. The big vote came down to making it mandatory. So they feel as though they need more information before they can vote to say, yes, this should be mandatory.
Exactly.
So
Remember
ridiculous.
I was talking about when you have the juice?
Right.
You got to use it.
It's just another
drink it.
attempt to have revisionist history. That's basically what it is.
Right. Now, the reason why I brought you up, Nither, I came across a story last week. Well, it was this week. And, unfortunately, and, the tragedy that you experienced with your father, and we all feel your pain because of us knowing you, and knowing to just lose a parent is tragic. And the reason why I don't want to stay on it, because I just don't want to open all wounds. And it's just horrific. But you do know that you felt that the person got away. Well, this past week in Delaware, A Maryland man who last year drove his pickup truck across a median on Delaware 1, causing a horrific crash that killed a New Jersey man and his 4 daughters. 5 people, and seriously injured his wife, was sentenced this Friday, to 1 year of probation.
Wow.
Now, if Alvin Herbert III, that's who did this, does not satisfy the terms of that probation, if he violates it, then he could face 14 years in prison.
So kill the guy and his 4 daughters. That's
Killed,
what.
Gone. Family wiped out. My wife said something to me the other day.
Dude.
What does the wife restart? Try to have family? She may be able to. Can't even have kids. You can't replace your family.
Was it
Probation.
like a DWI case or?
When it was that mean, I'm not police.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we need-
Driving while intoxicated.
DWI, DUI.
Or it was just a regular accident. 'Cause I was in a car with my friend who was a correction officer, and another friend was in the back seat, and we rolled over like 3 times, and my friend in the back seat flew out the back window and died.
Wow.
And my friend got a year
Wow.
in the same prison,
I don't
Rikers
see it
Island,
being
where
a
he worked.
DWI.
Wow.
Yeah, he got a year.
God was with you, man.
Oh,
He
was
first struck a
crazy.
sedan driven.
Definitely was
He
with me.
first struck a sedan, and then
So I'm
he
just trying to
basically
figure out
traveled
what
was-
across the medium. I don't see anything about a DWI.
I think I remember the story that he fell asleep or something. He was.
That's what
yeah.
I'm trying to see.
Yeah.
Right.
What was the aggravating factor? Was because if it's a DWI
Yeah.
and
Oh,
it's
yeah.
probation,
Yeah,
that's a whole different
believe.
ballgame.
If I remember this one, I don't believe there was any
No.
evidence of under the influence other than just
Exactly.
sleep, just tired sleep.
Exactly.
Right, but it still goes back to, like what laws are applied to whom and what's enforced and who gets deference. Like, and, in my dad's case, like the person who killed him, they never even checked that person for drugs or alcohol because the police completely assisted this person in just by looking at the way things transpired and what went on. So, again, it's like who's held accountable, what laws are applied, what sort of, actually, and whose lives are even valued too.
Right.
Like how much the people who are the victims, like how much value is placed on their life, and all of that comes. It's all connected back to what we were talking about earlier
said-
in the first segment too.
He said, Bobby, just to clear this up, he said he was distracted, never gave the reason why he was
Oh,
distracted.
okay.
So he never said he was sleep deprived or working too long.
Right.
And so it just made me think, wow, a whole family wiped out.
Yeah.
In
That's
probation,
horrible.
So it just
Yeah,
made me,
just-
and
Yeah.
it was, I
It's
didn't really
it's
wanna bring
like the
it
person
up, but
who
I'm just,
I know, and it's the
not
same
to
thing
make
like
you
the
feel- 'cause it doesn't make you
person.
feel better. It's just the point that there's just others out there that sometimes go through similar or worse things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not something I want to compare.
Right.
It's just another horrific story.
It is horrific. And it's like, like the person who killed my dad only got a careless driving ticket. And that was, at the time, it was $206. And I think it was like $33 in court fees. And that's it. And that was and that ticket was issued a month after a month after the incident, and that was only because I had the county reopen the case and everybody look into it, and that's the only reason that's the only reason that the person only got that too, and that's it, a careless driving ticket.
Larry, there is an event that is going to be taking place November 23rd from 12 to 3 p.m. at Rutgers University. You want to let our
Yes,
audience know?
Dr. Cornell West will be the guest speaker at a town hall meeting to discuss the topic,
Our role in the revolution.
our role in the revolution.
You forgot
Struggle
to roll
for,
in
the
the-
struggle
no, you
for
forgot to roll
racial,
in the
social, and economic justice. Larry just put his paper under his chair.
Our role in the revolution, the struggle for racial, social, and economic justice is
funny.
going to be Saturday, November 23rd at Rutgers University in Newark at the Golden Dome Athletic Center, 42 Warren Street in Newark, New Jersey. The doors are open at 12 noon.
That's right. 12
And
noon to about 3 p.m.
admission is free. Admission is free.
There you go. And we announced that a couple more times going up to the event. And, a lot of folks on social media said since President Trump has been president. We haven't heard nothing from Cornel West or Tavis Smiley. So you know what?
Well, you gonna
Well,
hear.
Cornel-
I'm
He's
not
been
going
on
to wait
Fox
till the
News.
event. I'm going to reach out to, well, depending on how you want to do it. Either one of us reach out to Professor Cornel West, see if he wants to come in.
Yeah.
And let him come on in and join us. You know, he's been
He'll
been
want
here
to
before.
come because that'll just attract more people.
Matter of fact, maybe because he calls Brother M2 the last Renaissance man. Maybe we get both. of them.
last
Come
Renaissance.
on.
That's a good one.
I like that title.
But that's I turn it over to no. Sports man.
It'll be
I
quick.
Turn it over to Bob.
It'll be quick, right? So, basketball season is underway. Knicks 1 win so far.
Close games.
But they're starting to show at least some cohesion defensively. They had a nice showing against Boston on Friday night. Jason Tatum of the Celtics hit a game-winning shot with under a second to go. So defensively, they're starting to form an identity. While over in Brooklyn, the Nets have won 2 games. And
I don't know how they lost last night.
And Kyrie Irving, he took some criticism this week because reports came out that he's moody, and his moodiness is what makes others feel nervous around signing him and everything, and that's why the Knicks didn't go after him and everything. Just my 2 cents on it, right? We all are in moods. Right. We all have moods, and he came out and said this, which is he's a human being. He gets he gets the right to feel the way he feels. My only counter to that, Kyrie, is when you want to be a leader, there's a time and place to share your mood. So you can have them, but when things are going crazy on the court or in practice and guys are looking at you for an answer, you can't be in the mood. And so but his teammates have come out in Boston and in Brooklyn to say, it's not been a problem. So as long as his teammates don't feel it's a problem, no one else should feel it's a problem out there.
Could I just say this too about Kyrie real quick? Just something that I observed that since I've seen him on Brooklyn, and not to say prior, but since he's been here, he plays hard.
He's always played hard.
He plays hard.
He's always played hard.
He gives you all the minutes out there on that court.
He does. Kyrie just has never finished the season healthy going back to college. So because he plays hard, the wear and tear on his body. But he gives you something. The Brooklyn fans are excited. He's bringing them a shot of energy out there, and when Kevin Durant joins him next year, there'll be a force to reckon with out there. And then also with the California wildfires, LeBron James and many of the Lakers, they have their homes up there. So his house up in Getty, in the Getty area, Brentwood, he had to evacuate him and his family because the fires were getting close. So his house hasn't burnt down, but the fires were close enough where the smoke and everything, they had to evacuate. So
why do those people keep rebuilding?
It's interesting. I've heard stories this week around people, if that's all you know, right?
Somebody said that to me yesterday.
Think about it, right? The accolades you got from those who grew up in the street, right? You made it, you got out.
Right.
There's some people, they have such a limited view of things that home is safe for them. Yeah. So they stay there. But these wildfires
They're crazy,
are causing
horrific.
people to revisit that, to say, I now have to look at something I've never looked at. And these people in their 50s and 60s to say, this is probably not going to work for me. I need to find
and the
someplace else
fires
to
are
live.
also worse too because of climate change.
Yeah.
And if you look at the images, just horrifying. Like I watched this one video where I don't remember what road they were on, but the people ended up breaking through like a fence or something and drove off of the highway to get away from a fire. And like actual, just like civilians were directing traffic and getting everybody out. And some people even ran out of their cars and like fell down. I mean, it was crazy. It was a crazy video.
And they had a big wind situation, which unheard of, where you had 70-mile-per-hour winds, where if you had a wall there, that fire, due to the wind, could jump the wall and be on the other side. So, because you had that big winter storm in the middle of the country, and it caused such backdraft going into the West Coast, California, L.A., and the worst time, as you said, with the
and the other thing is just there's a lot, the electric company, the power company out there is taking tremendous criticism, many of it rightly so. But I do want to point out that the criticism they're getting now should have been the criticism they received 10 years ago, because there's only so much they can do. And so when I hear, Gavin Newsom talk about they're greedy, they've been greedy 10 years ago. And the money that they pocketed then is the money they should have built into infrastructure to put these lines underground. And what's causing this fire is these above line grounds that have been there for decades. When they spark, they cause these fires because of climate change. Things are dry out there. So for them to now come up with a way to say, how do I take the above ground and put it underground? That doesn't happen with a snap of a finger. You have to do major, major infrastructure. And on infrastructure, my last point here, when Trump got into office, the one thing there was bipartisan support on was infrastructure.
You mean it's not Infrastructure Week?
We have seen zero. We have seen zero. And this is when he controlled all houses. We've seen zero.
Yep. I just want to say on the sports note, a shout out today to everybody that's running the New York Marathon. It is the greatest marathon, the biggest marathon in the entire world. Over 50,000, I think the number is something like 53,000 people are running. 1 million people watch it. They come out on the streets and watch it. You know, Africans really have been dominating this thing. A woman from Kenya was the first place woman last year. And I think so among the men, and the record holder for the New York Marathon is Jeffrey Matoy, I think 2 hours and 5 minutes. But my heart goes out to those people who are not record holders, the people who take 4, 5, and 6 hours to finish it, 10 hours to finish it. I've run New York 3 times, so I know what people go through.
You did it 3 times?
I've run New York 3 times, right? And I really, my heart goes out to the people who are just regular people who are out there doing the best they can. And there were a record number of people last year. 53,000 people started, but 52,000 people finished.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's quite an accomplishment, you know.
Now, did they run through the precincts that you were in charge of?
No, they're not running to East Flatbush or East New York. That's not happening.
Flatbush, yeah. Let me just say this, Corey.
They move them around.
Corey, I want to thank you for joining both shows today, brother. You know, some folks on the stream say to have you back.
Yes.
You know, because you bring it from here, brother. You know, I got to know you here, but you know, I wasn't in the streets of Queens doing your street days. I was in Brooklyn.
Right.
But I do know what the streets were about, man, and I'm glad that you was able to survive because the streets were out there for a lot of us not to survive. You understand? So
well, I'm glad, you know,
that
we have this friendship.
Yes, sir.
You can always call me anytime I could be of any assistance. Just trying to spread my message out there because a lot of police officers, you know, I have this hashtag that I write. I keep it right, not real. Because you remember you was growing up, your parents told you to do the right thing. But then this hip hop came along and everybody, yo, I keep it real. I ain't no snitch. And I would say, no, I keep it right. So if you do something in front of me, I'm telling. Most police officers like to keep it real. They don't like to keep it right. And so I fancy myself on doing what's right. I call it right. People either love me or they hate my freaking guts. And I'm good with that. But I'm always going to call it right down the middle.
Exactly. Well,
Appreciate
we want to
that.
thank you, brother. Thank you, and you know, appreciate it. I just want to say this real quick. You know, especially to those folks that want to make a difference, especially the young folks. You know, study your history, know your history, because if you don't know your history, then you don't know what folks have done before you. And you don't want to go out there and wind up wasting time on things that might have not worked or mistakes that other people have done. But do something. You don't have to get behind this person or that person. It starts with you. You can motivate yourself, and that hopefully motivates others. But start with yourself. And that's my message to all of you, and that's, you know, to make a difference. Do something, participate in something to make a difference. Don't just complain about the problem or you just become part of the problem. All right? Do something.
And as Bob Slade taught us, get your mind right and keep a good thought. Thanks for tuning in this week.
All right. God bless. Peace.